as children, they were just in awe half the time at these sets and coming on board a ship and wanting to believe. And that's just food for an actor. You know, you just want to drink that stuff.
First of all, guys, I really enjoyed this film. I love that it added to the lore of Peter Pan and Wendy. I love that we explore Peter Pan and Captain Hook's complicated relationships and the complexity of the characters. Jude, first question for you. What was your favorite part about exploring Hook's past more deeply?
I just loved being able to join the dots and understand, you know, it's one thing to play a kind of arch villain and just turn on the sort of camp of you know, the bad guy, but to really understand them, to really go back and look at the damage done and the unfortunate path that this person has trod and how that affects the way they dress, the way they look, and just their spirit, their heart was, you know, it's that's why I do this job. I love all that stuff, and it gives you roots, gives you gravitas when you step on and you have to play the part.
David, I think you did a tremendous job of grabbing stuff from the book, the animated film, and kind of making stuff your own as well. Can you talk to me about the adaptation process and how you decided what to pull from the book versus the animated film versus a new perspective?
Definitely. It was a long and somewhat arduous process because at first we thought, let's stick to the book. Let's go back to the book. And then there were all sorts of problems we were having. We were having all these difficulties getting into the story. Knowing that we're telling a story that like audiences know what Neverland is. Do we need to explain it? And then at one point, I remember going back and just rewatching the animated film and realized, oh, Walt Disney and his team had all those same problems and they solved a lot of them. Let's lean on that a little bit more, which was a really nice like realization that that those problems have been solved. There are other things that were interesting where we had scenes in the script at various points that had been done so well in other Peter Pan movies that we just couldn't go there. Even though it's from the original book, there are scenes in Hook that you just can't touch. There are scenes in the 2003 version of Peter Pan that you just can't touch. We're not going to do it better than that. So what can we do different? And so much of what we could do differently here was invest the characters with a depth and humanity that I feel was very personal to me, became very personal to all of the actors who played those parts, and brought a degree of integrity to the story that I think is fresh and hopefully novel.
Now, Jude, can you talk to me about your approach to Captain Hook? Was clearly a villain, but a sympathetic one?
Yeah, I guess that was tied in with understanding who he had been. Who was he as a little boy? And what, you know, obviously so much of the theme of Peter Pan is about growing up and Hook being the adult in the mix along with the pirates. But, you know, he symbolizes the bad path. He symbolizes a life where, you know, the scars heal over scars, and it has an effect ultimately on his heart and on his soul. And so kind of understanding and demonstrating that was, I think, the most rewarding aspect and challenging in many ways, because at the same time, you're in a fantasy. You want him to be fun. You want him to be attractive and laughable and equally threatening. So getting that mix just right was the challenge. Yeah.
Now, David, what inspired the past connection between Hook and Peter Pan?
Just curiosity. Like that was one of the great things to bring to the story, was a sense of the curiosity that just, you know, as you start writing these iconic characters and just trying to give them a little bit more texture, you naturally begin to ask those questions. And it was something that I was like, do audiences care? Do they want to know? And then I realized it doesn't matter. I want to know. And I'm going to do this for myself. And hopefully people are going along for the ride.
Yeah, there was times in that movie where I was definitely cheering for certain things to happen and you paid them off. So I'm happy that it panned out that way. Jude, last question for you. Ever Anders and Alexander Bologna are tremendous as Peter Pan and Wendy. Can you talk about working with that young cast as an antagonist in Peter Pan versus as a mentor in something like Skeleton Crew?
They were very much a team. Alexander, Ever, and the Lost Kids. They were a formidable presence on set, and they approached it with great discipline, and they were also having the time of their lives in equal measure. And so I just sort of fed off that. I fed off their desire and the ease with which they just tripped into make-believe and I tried to make sure no one really saw me as Jude and just as Hook, which meant I could get away with being, nasty and gnarly and play up the kind of fantasy that they were all living. And then equally, I could feed off the playfulness, which is so important on a film set, that you're there telling a story, creating a world, no matter what that is. And of course, as children, they were just in awe half the time at these sets and coming on board a ship and wanting to believe. And that's just food for an actor. You just want to drink that stuff.
Well, look, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. The film is fantastic. I love the way that it all came together, and it brings something new to the lore in Peter Pan and Wendy. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Take care.